Hi everybody, welcome to the Knitting Turnpike. Welcome to the Knitting Turnpike. My name is Gina Pike. I'm so glad that you're here. Today we are going to be talking about the second part of my knitting adventure on knitting my first pair of socks. I knitted these socks. These are top-down socks. The pattern is by the Crazy Sock Lady, and if you want a very detailed tutorial, please go check her videos out. I'll put a link to the video that I used in the description box below. This is the second video I'm going to be doing talking about the construction of these socks. The first video, I'll put a link up here if you're interested and want to go watch that first, because in that video I talked about the materials you needed, and I talked about starting at the top, making this ribbing, the cuff. I couldn't think of the word. And then I talk about how you make the legs. Today we're going to be talking about all about this heel and how do you do this type of heel for a top-down sock. And it's not a very long video, but it is a very important part of the whole process. And when you get through with this heel, it's like magic. It just feels like, wow, I am going to actually make a sock, and I'm not just making a tube of yarn, knitted yarn. So anyway, where we left off is we had just knitted 59 rows, which made this leg, and on the 60th row, that's where you start this slip stitch heel. Now you knit this slip stitch heel, and you're not going to really be knitting this part on the needle 1. You're going to just be knitting on the needle 2, and so you're going to be knitting back and forth flat, so you're not going to be knitting in the round until we start picking up those stitches around the heel to create the gusset. So you're going to create all this in a flat way and do the heel turn, and then pick up the stitches to make the gusset, and then you'll start knitting it in the round again and creating the foot. So let's get into it. I made a series of videos. I'm going to piece these together that showed the process of when I was on my first sock. I just made it. On my second sock, I videotaped portions of it. So I'm going to insert those portions right now. Again, this is going to be the slip stitch heel, the heel turn, which is this triangular piece here, and then the picking up the stitches along the edge of this heel, the slip stitch heel on both sides to create the gusset, and then you start knitting in the round, and you do these decreases along on each side as well, and that creates this whole turn in the sock to create the foot. And you have, of course, your heel. Now for sock knitting, there are a lot of different heels. This is a slip stitch heel. There's an afterthought heel. There's a fish lips heel. There's all kinds of heels for socks. So if you do this and you don't like it, I know that you can go on Ravelry and look at different types of socks. Let's get into the making of the heel, the slip stitch heel, the heel turn, and the gusset, picking up the stitches. All right, we're just going to pretend like I've knitted the leg of my sock, because I'm having to redo my sock because all the videos I made last week while I was making my second sock messed up. So if you could indulge me and be a little patient with me and pretend like I finished knitting all 59 rows, because I don't want to make I will never ever again make a joke about making a third sock. Ever in my life. I will never ever do that again. Maybe I'm getting punished for making that joke. I don't know. So let's pretend that we're ready, that I've done the 59 rows, and we're to the point we're on row 60. Just pretend with me in my make-believe land here of knitting socks. The next thing you want to do, we're on the 60th row. You're going to knit across this needle 1. There we go. You know, I do apologize for the quality of my first video. I worked on that video for 2 days straight trying to get it to look right, and obviously there was some, I don't know, some setting on my phone when I recorded all 15 of my videos that can't be fixed, and they look terrible. They're skewed in a weird way, and when I try to fix it, it makes something for YouTube that you guys can't watch. So I appreciate the patience and the kindness of pretending to me that I have 59 rows already knit, so that I don't have to knit another sock fully, and can just show you the important pieces of how a sock is knit. And if you hear a little bit of tone in my voice, I apologize for that too. It's been a really rough day. It's my birthday. Alright, we knitted the first part of that. You're going to push the needle through. We're on the second part of round 60, and for this part we're going to be making the heel, the slip stitch heel. And for this part we're only going to be going back and forth on this needle too. So you're just going to ignore this for a while. We're just going to go back and forth across this needle. And first thing you want to do on this row is you're going to pull your needle out. First row, you're going to slip the first stitch purlwise with the yarn and back. Then you're going to knit the next stitch, and you're going to repeat that. So that's why it's called a slip stitch heel, because you're slipping the first stitch purlwise with the yarn and back and knitting the next stitch. You do that all the way across this row. Because this is an even number of stitches, you should end with a knit stitch. I think after knitting two socks, I think the heel is actually my favorite part of the sock. Doing the heel, doing the turn, and then doing the gusset, and how it leads right into the foot. It just feels really like you've actually started, you know, like you're actually making a sock, because it makes the turn. It just is awesome. So that's my last stitch, and is a knit stitch. Okay, so that's row 1. You slip knit, slip purlwise, knit the next stitch. You turn your work. You're going to work across the same needle, so don't push. You can push this in a little bit. Get it out of your way. The second row, you're going to slip the first stitch purlwise with the yarn in front. So the yarn's in front now. You're going to slip the first stitch purlwise. You're going to leave the yarn in front, and you're going to purl the rest of the stitches on this row. Alright, so now we're back to the front side of this. We're going to repeat those 2 rows over and over again. So you're going to, not over and over again, you're going to do it for a total of however many times for the sock that you're making, the size sock you're making. For my size sock, I have to repeat it a total of 14 times. For a medium-sized sock, 16 times. For a large sock, 18 times. So you're going to end up, for me, since I'm doing it 14 times and there's 2 rows, I'm going to end up with a total of 28 rows. 14 times 2, 28. So, again, you have the yarn in back, slip the first stitch purlwise, and then knit. And you just do this, repeat these 2 rows until you have knit 28 rows. Okay, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to come back when I'm ready to show you guys the heel turn. The next step is the heel turn. So now I've knitted my heel. Again, this is my pretend sock because I had trouble with my video. So that's my cuff. That's my, pretend like this is 59 rows of the leg. And now we got to the point where we're knitting the heel. This is going to be very interesting, isn't it? So the next thing we're going to do is work on the heel turn. We're still working back and forth just on this needle too. I knitted 28 rows because that's the size for the size small. The first row you're going to do for the on the right side, in row 1 we're going to slip 1 purlwise with the yarn and back. With the yarn and back. And then we're going to knit 14. If you're making a different size sock than me, for a medium size sock you're going to knit 16. For a large you're going to knit 18. For mine I have to knit 14, so it should be 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. So yep, that's right. Then after you knit the number of stitches you're supposed to knit, you do a slip knit where you slip the stitch knitwise, slip the stitch knitwise, knit the 2 stitches together through the back loop, knit 1, turn to work on the back side. Then you're going to slip 1 purlwise with the yarn in front, purl 3, purl 2 together, purl 1, then turn, then on rows 3 and 4, these are the 2 rows you're going to be repeating until you get all of the stitches on your needle worked, and you'll understand here in just a second. For row 3 you're going to slip 1 purlwise with the yarn and back, knit, then you're going to knit to 1 stitch before the gap. Now we created the gap when we were doing the first 2 rows, and you'll understand when we get there. I'll show you what it looks like. There's the gap. So we're supposed to knit to 1 stitch before the gap, slip the stitch knitwise, slip the stitch knitwise after the gap, knit those 2 stitches together through the back loop, knit 1 and turn. As you can see, these stitches have not been knitted, and you have some stitches over here that have never been knitted. So we're going to be using all of these as we create this triangular piece of fabric here that's called your heel turn. It's underneath your heel. Maybe I should take this off the blocker so you can see it better. It's this piece of fabric here, triangular shape. It goes along the bottom of your foot, and it attaches the heel and starts the turn of your sock. You can see it's short rows, and that's what we're going for right there. So let's continue on. We just did the first row 3. We did the first row 3. Now we're going to do row 4. We slip 1 purlwise with the yarn in front, purl to 1 stitch before the gap on this side. There's the gap on this side, right there. We're going to purl these 2 stitches together, purl 1, and then turn. And now we're going to repeat rows 3 and 4 until all the stitches on this side and all the stitches on this side have been used. So slip one purlwise with the yarn and back, knit to 1 stitch before the gap, then do an SSK, knit 1 turn. You see the triangular piece of fabric being created. Again, we're on the 3rd, so we slip that first stitch purlwise, yarn and back, knit to the 1 stitch before the gap, and then we will be almost done with this heel turn. The heel and the heel turn goes really easy, but it's the magic that makes the whole sock. It's really what makes it a sock, kind of. Of course, the other parts of the sock will probably argue with me, but like I said, I think this is my favorite part of the sock. So 1 stitch before the gap, slip knitwise, knit these 2 together through the back loop, knit 1, and turn. Now all the stitches have been worked on this side. So that was the last row 3 we're going to have. We're going to do this. Now on this one, since we're on the edge, she just goes ahead and purls this, and she said that she purls it instead of slip stitching it, because it later on helps to reduce some sort of gap that you might have there. So you just purl these stitches to 1 stitch before the gap, then we'll purl 2 together, purl 1, and we should have worked all the stitches on this row, and we will be done with the heel turn. Oops. Oh, there. Yeah, there it is. 1 stitch before the gap, purl 2 together, purl 1. Yep, no more stitches left on that side either. So that worked out perfectly. And it says, like, for a small size sock, you're supposed to have 16 stitches left. So let's see. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Bingo. For a medium size sock, you're supposed to have 18 stitches left. And for a large, 20 stitches left. So now we're done with the heel turn, the heel turn, and it's time to move on to the gusset. Start the gusset because we've worked the heel and the heel turn, and now we're going to be to create the gusset. We're going to be picking up stitches along both sides of this flap of material that we have created. When I pick up stitches, I like to go through both legs of the stitch like this. If I'm picking up the stitch, I'm going to go through both legs of the stitch like this, so you can see it pulled out. This one, I would go through both legs of the stitch like this to pick up that stitch, go under there to pick up the stitch. Just makes it more secure. Alright, so now for the gusset, it's all going to still be worked on N2. We're going to keep the same amount of stitches across N1, which for me is 28. Again, it's whatever you started out with. You are going to need a stitch marker to put in the middle because the beginning of the round is going to change just for this section. So I have a cute little pink marker because you guys know I like pink. Okay, for me, I'm going to knit across the first 8 stitches. For a medium-sized sock, you want to do the first 9 stitches, and for a large, the first 10 stitches. And it should be right at the center of your stitch count. If you remember, my stitch count was 16. 8 is right in the center of my stitch count. 2, 4, 6, 8. And I should have 8 over here. 2, 4, 6, 8. Yep. And same for you. If it's 9, you should have 9 on the other side. 10, you should have 10 on the other side. Place your marker. That's now going to be your beginning of the round. And then you go ahead and knit across the last remaining stitches on your needle. For me, that's 8. For a medium, it's size sock, it's 9. And for a, for a large size sock, it's 10. We're going to turn it this way, and we're going to pick up the stitches along this edge of your gusset. For a small size sock, I'm going to be picking up 14 stitches, medium 16, a large 18. So the first one I'm going to pick up is going to be right here. And what you do is you just wrap it around like that, and there's the first stitch. Put it under both legs, wrap it around like that, pull it through. There's your second stitch. You don't have to pick up every one of these, but it is pretty close to picking up every one of these. You can skip one, like if they're really close together. I think I counted more than what I had to pick up. Let's see how many I have. I have 13. 13. So I need one more. And I've got 2 stitches, so I'm going to try to pick it up in that second stitch. Space it out a little bit. There we go. Should be 14. Let me make sure. 2, 4, 6, 8. 14 stitches. And then again 16 for medium, 18 for large. You also want to pick up 1 extra stitch in the ladder, like this. Knit it through the back loop, because that helps prevent it from having more of a gap there. I still have a little bit of a gap, but I would shudder to think if I didn't do that, since I do have a gap when I did it. But then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to knit across these stitches here on needle 1. We're back to needle 1. Yay! And this is the front of the sock, the instep. And when we get to the other side of this, we're going to pick up the stitches along the other side of the heel. And then I'll explain to you that that is called the gusset, and we will be doing decreases on either side of the gusset until we get the number of stitches on the first needle and the number of stitches on the second needle to equal in number again, and then we'll go back to knitting the foot. But this is creating an extra piece of fabric that you need for that ankle and where your foot bends and turns from your leg into your foot. So it's a very beautiful, magical way to create this extra fabric that's needed for this in your sock. Okay, we're to the end of needle 1. Now we're going to turn it this way and pick up all the stitches along this edge. The first thing we're going to do is that ladder stitch, and we're going to knit through the back loop on that. Just like this. To the back loop, pull a little bit tighter than that. And again, I've got the cords separating. And then now we're going to go through and we're going to pick up these stitches. I have to pick up again the same number, so I need to pick up 14 stitches. And if you have a medium, you'll pick up 16. If you have a large, you'll pick up 18. Okay, let's see how many stitches we have. 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. That's, yep, that's perfect. Okay, so now we've got everything picked up. Let me explain this a little bit. This is your needle 1, which is the top of your sock. And that should be whatever number of stitches you started out with. That's not going to change. This is your needle 2, where you picked up stitches along the edge of the heel and the heel turn. You got the heel turn stitches, and you got the other edge of your heel, and this is what you call the gusset. And what we're going to be trying to do here is take the number of stitches here that's around this needle 2 and reduce it to the same number that's on this needle here. Let's just get an idea here. I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, 4, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 42, 44, 46. I have 46 stitches. So I'm going to be taking 46 stitches down to 28. You're going to be doing a decrease every time you get to this part, and a decrease every time you get to this part. So every round you knit, you're going to be doing 2 decreases. So I said, what did I say, 48 to 28. You could do the math and see how many decreases you have to do, you know, divided by 2. So you take that, to me, that's, you subtract, that's 20 divided by 2. I've got 10 rounds to knit. So take the number of stitches on your needle, 2, subtract the number of stitches that you're going to, divide that by 2, and that tells you how many rounds you're going to be knitting. Okay, so let's get started here. The first thing we're going to do, I'm just making sure I have enough separation between all 3 of these sections. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to knit to 3 stitches before the end step, which is the needle 1 portion of your sock. So that is right here, this join. So you continue on, move your marker, It gets a little bunched up when you get to this level, but it'll start to even out the more decreases you do. Just be patient with yourself. Take your time picking up your stitches. If you don't like it, just do it again until you like how they look. So we're 3 stitches before the instep here. 1, 2, 3. You're going to do a knit 2 together, then a knit 1. And you're going to turn your work, because we just did that. You're going to push this needle back into all the stitches that you need to work across your instep. And then you're going to put your yarn over that, pull this out of the way a little bit. You're going to pull your needle from the top, and you're going to knit across your instep stitches. You're always just knitting across the instep stitches. Alright. Almost to the end. There's the last stitch on the instep. I always kind of like to do a sanity check. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 4, 26, 28. Yep, still the same number. Okay, so you turn. That we just knitted that. Push this back through the stitches that you need to work. You're going to pull this out. First thing you're going to do when you get to needle 2 is you're going to do a decrease here, and you're going to knit 1, pull it tight, and the next stitch you're going to do is an SSK. Slip, knitwise, slip, knitwise, and knit 2 together through the back loop. This is where I always have my gap, so I'm trying to work hard to pull this together tighter. This is where I have my gap on my sock the worst, I think. You just knit across the rest of your sock to the end of the round where the little pink, wherever your marker is the end of your round. And you're just going to be repeating these 2 stitches, these 2 rounds over. This is the first round where you have the decreased, and the second round you're just going to knit all of the stitches. So the first round is a decrease, the second round is a knit all the stitches. So where I said before that you were going to have 10 rounds, you're going to have 20, because there's going to be a decrease round and then a knit round. So for me there's going to be 20 rounds, so you have to double what the number was that you got before, because I didn't take into account the knit round. I hope that makes sense. There's going to be, for me, there's going to be 20 rows to knit here for the gusset. Alright, so that's the end of my round. So the next round is just going to be a knit round. I think I'm going to mark these. I'm curious to see if that'll work. I know my odd numbers are knit rounds and my even numbers are decreases. Alright, that's the end of the second round, which was just a knit round. Now we're back at the beginning of the marker. Okay, and I just finished the knitting the round. I dropped my little pink stitch marker somewhere, so I had to place it with a blue. That was a knit round. You're going to repeat those 2 rounds over and over again until the needles that are on your needle 2, which are these, are equal to the stitches. That number's going to equal the number on here. This is 28. This is what I started out with. Again, we increased because we picked up along the sides of the heels. I have, when you knit, the first round, just to remind you again, you knit until 3 stitches before this, 3 stitches before where your needle 1 starts, and you do a knit 2 together, knit 1. Then you knit across the instep, needle 1, and then when you start this next part of needle 2, you do a knit, SSK, decrease, and then finish that up, and then that's 1 round. And then the next round, you just knit all the stitches. So I just finished knitting all the stitches, and now I'm ready to start the decrease round. And you do that again until you have the number on needle 2 matching the number on needle 1. When I come back, I'm going to have my needles matching, and we'll be able to go into knitting the foot after that. Okay, I'm on the last round of my second row 2. I have 14 stitches before the divider and 14 stitches after the divider, which makes 28, which matches the number of stitches on my N1, which is 28. So I've reached the divider. This is the end of the row now. That was my last knit row. You can see where I've done the decreases along the edge here. And the decreases over here as well. And once you reach that section, you just take the divider out, and the beginning of the row is gonna change again just to be needle 1 and needle 2. So you just knit across these stitches that are left on needle 2, and then once again you'll have 28 stitches on needle 1, 28 stitches on needle 2. And I'll show you what all this looks like. So that was that. There's 28 stitches. Yep, 28. That was your needle 2. This is your needle 1, which is the top of your sock. And you've done all the decreases. You've done your heel. You've done your heel turn, which is that part right there, and then you picked up all these stitches along the edges and created the gusset and did all the decreases along the edges to bring it back in to make it fit around the top of your foot. That looks pretty good actually. My laddering was getting a little bit better on this one. So now you're ready to move on to make the foot. As you can see, you've got, well, again, this is my sock. I would have a longer leg, but I've created the heel, the turn, the gusset, and now I can go on and start making the sock and the round again. And when you get to this part, you're going to have your needle 1 and your needle 2 again, and you're just going to knit across both of these needles, needle 1 and needle 2, to create the foot. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here and like this type of content, please subscribe to my channel. It would totally make my day. Thank you guys for watching. Again, there's going to be one more video in this series on how I made my first pair of socks, and that will be finishing this up. It'll be finishing up the foot and closing up the toe, and that'll be coming out in a few days. Thank you guys so much for being here, for watching. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below, and we will catch you guys next time. Thank you again. Have a lovely day.